smarter, not harder, always, okay? I always wanted to do the least amount of work I could to still get an A. They talk about people be failing this class. I know who won't be failing it. Not an A. I never once throughout nursing school read the textbook. And that might be controversial to say. They made nursing school like their life. They were willing to put in 6-8 hour study days. I was not gonna do that, and I still did perfectly fine. I still got A's. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Denasia, but you can call me Nay, and that is no E. So today's video is going to be the infamous, long-awaited how I studied in nursing school video. So I made one of these videos before, but I thought I'd make an updated one because how I studied only got better and better every semester. And I just graduated nursing school. Not really just, it was like a month ago now, but that even feels crazy to say. I took my NCLEX 10 days after I graduated, and I passed. First try, 85 questions, clock it. So I feel like who's a more credible source, you know? So in this video, I'm going to be telling you guys how I studied in nursing school. But before I go ahead and get into that, I just want to give a little backstory. So I did document my entire nursing school journey from beginning to end on YouTube through my nursing school diary series. So I will link that here so you guys can watch that if y'all want to see real time, like how my studying has changed and improved. And also, as usual, I am going to be doing a get ready with me while I film this video because I can't focus that well. If I just try to like get ready without doing anything else, this video will be boring and all over the place. I think having my hands occupied for some reason helps me stay on track. And I also think it's more interesting to watch because y'all can watch me actually doing something rather than just me yapping for hours straight. For starters, I went to UTA for nursing school at the University of Texas at Arlington. I did their accelerated campus-based program, which was 15 months. So I went summer, fall, spring, summer, and then I graduated. So it was 15 months. The only semesters that were really accelerated were the summer semesters, because obviously the summer semesters were shorter. The other 2 semesters were pretty much at a normal 16-week course pace. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So before I get started, I just want to say that this is not the only way to study. This is what worked for me personally, guys. This is what worked for me personally. And to tell you that, I feel like I have to just lead with what kind of student I am. Just being honest, I am not and was not I want to work smarter, not harder, always, okay? I always wanted to do the least amount of work I could to still get an A. With that being said, my study methods are going to be a little different than the people that you see on TikTok and on YouTube that are like, they made nursing school like their life. They were willing to put in 6-8 hour study days. I was not going to do that, and I still did perfectly fine. I still got A's. You do not have to do all that if you don't want to. If you want to, if that's how you study, or if that's what's needed for you, for the average person, all that is not necessary and it's not needed. I'm going to break this video up into 3 parts. So we're going to start with before class, during class, after class, because that's kind of how I broke up my studying. So every week, when you first get your syllabus, you need to know what information you're going to be going over in class. Every week, they should always publish it. Before class, a lot of schools are going to have reading. My school had reading. I never once throughout nursing school read the textbook. And that might be controversial to say. I never once read the textbook. Not even one time. I never read it. And if my scholarship didn't pay for my textbooks, I wouldn't even bought them, to be honest. If, like, they weren't tied to the homework. Because I never read them. I just didn't. I am not a person that learns from reading, I feel like. That's not one of my best way to learn. Which, like I said, that's why you kind of have to, when you start nursing school, it's going to be a learning curve. You're going to have to see what works best for you, what kind of learner you are, what helps you understand the easiest. For me, that was definitely not reading the textbook, because in all honesty, I could read those, 100 pages before class, and I still would not have a good understanding of the topic, of the subject. So a much better, an effective way for me to study, and also a much quicker way for me to study, was videos. So my school, depending on the class, provided recorded lectures. And most times the recorded lectures will be a different professor than the professor that was teaching the class currently. But the information will be the same, if not better. So depending on the class, I would either watch the recorded lectures or I would watch YouTube videos over that particular topic. So my go-to for the YouTube videos, I prefer Simple Nursing. I did not buy his subscription plan. I only use free videos on YouTube, which obviously were limited. If I was going to pay for any of those YouTube people's plans, as far as like Simple Nursing, Nexus Nursing, Level Up RN, I would have paid for Simple Nursing. To me personally, I feel like Simple Nursing gives you a very good overview of the topics that he's talking about in the videos, but also you could tell he's well versed in common nursing school questions or commonly tested topics, because he would really make sure to include those. And also he had the best mnemonics, because although a small part of nursing school is memorization, I feel like the majority of it is how you answer the questions, or knowing how to answer the questions. Some things just simply have to be memorized. Like specifically signs and symptoms of different diseases, you have to memorize them. Certain treatments of certain diseases, you have to memorize them. So Simple Nursing really helped a lot with that. I feel like Level Up RN, for me, sometimes I feel she caters a lot to ATI. So if your school uses ATI, I would mostly use Level Up RN for before my ATI exams. So I'll talk about how I study for my ATI exams as well. But I would pretty much only use Level Up RN before my ATI exams, because I do think she does a very good job of detailing common topics that ATI will go over. I see why they sued her, because she's pretty much on point with ATI, perfectly. But I feel like for my actual nursing school exams, especially if you go to a nursing school that is pretty challenging and kind of has hard questions like mine did, Simple Nursing was that girl. Also, during this, I will say I used electronic notes for majority of nursing school. There was one class, which was critical care. The critical care at my school was notorious for being the class that was the hardest in our program, and also being the class that caused most people to fail. If they were going to fail, people usually failed critical care. So I was really nervous going into critical care. So for that particular class, I did write my notes down on paper. And that is simply because it is scientifically proven that writing, actually pen to paper writing stuff, helps you remember it better. And so for that class, I did write my notes down on paper. However, for every other class, I used Pages on all Apple devices. And I would just, as I'm writing the video, I would write my notes into a Pages document. And the reason why I prefer to write my notes into a Pages document is because when you, the next part, I'm going to talk about what I did in class, and you'll see why using Pages was much easier for me personally. So the benefits of watching the videos before class is that it introduces you to the topic before you even get to class. And it also, in nursing school, you need repetition. There's so much to remember that you need to be hearing things 3-4 times before the exam. So you already got your first time hearing it out of the way. And as I'm saying these videos usually didn't take long. Like, this would maybe take me 30 minutes, and I did take notes while watching the videos. It's very important that you do the notes while you're watching the videos, because when I get to the next class part, it's going to free up your hands and your mind, so that you can really focus on what your particular professor is saying, especially if your professor is the person that writes your exams. So that's what I would do before class. I would watch the videos and write my notes. I would pretty much do this like the day before class, or maybe like 2 days, depending on how much topics we were really going to cover. At my nursing school, we only had each class once a week. So each class would be a 3 to 4 hour lecture, because we only had it once a week. So it would kind of be a lot of information to cover. So depending on how much information and like what kind of information it was, I would maybe start a day before or 2 days before class. Now we're going to get into what I did in class. So this is the most important part if you're going to go to class. So just to be very clear, I did not go to class for a majority of nursing school, if we're going to be honest. But I do recommend everybody, if attendance is mandatory at your school, you have to go, so go. But at my school, attendance was not mandatory for majority of classes, and even the classes that attendance was mandatory for, I sometimes still didn't go, because at UTA, it would maybe be like 5% of our grade, and like, this was for like some of those classes, like legal nursing, like last semester classes, that I could afford to lose the 5%. So sometimes I didn't go. But I would always go to class maybe like the first week or two, just to see how helpful the information was and how helpful the class is. Some teachers are just not great teachers, and some teachers are good teachers, but our teaching styles don't align. So if I was in class feeling like I don't know what she's talking about and I don't feel like this is helping me, I would not go back. I wouldn't, because you can use that time to study in a more effective manner. In nursing school, your time is very limited, so when I am studying, I'm making sure that everything I'm doing is worth my time and is genuinely helping me. Because, baby, time is of the essence in nursing school. You do not have time to waste doing anything, really, to be honest. Nothing at all. Anything that's not helping you, I wouldn't do it if it's not going to affect my grade. So I did not go to a lot of classes. Honestly, the only class that I would go to and I went to consistently was critical care. Because like I said, I was very nervous about that class, and it actually ended up being my highest grade out of any class ever, which is crazy, because it's like, man, maybe if I would have been applying myself this hard the whole program. But whether I get a 90 or I get 100, it's still an A. So I really didn't care. But I did do really well in that class. I think I got like a 96 or a 97, which in that class was crazy, because people were struggling so bad. But because I anticipated it being bad already, I was on my A game. I said, they talk about people be failing this class. I know who won't be failing it. Not an A. So, yeah. If you decide the class is helpful, this is what I would do in class. So you already have your notes that you took at home whenever you watched the videos previously. So you should already have an intro into the topic, whether that's because you watched lecture videos that your school provides, or whether that's because you watched a additional source such as Simple Nursing, Level Up RN, etc., etc. You already have an intro into what you're going to be learning about. You should already have the basics of the topic down, and you should already have your notes done on that topic. This is why I said that taking notes electronically was so helpful, because you can add to the notes in class without it looking a mess. When you write on paper, it's kind of hard to add to the notes. So I would do it electronically for the most part. So as far as the notes go, I would write down, like, while I was doing in class, I would write down, for one, terminology. Think about the way that your professor describes things, if you get what I'm saying. Especially if your instructor writes their own exams. In nursing, you're going to hear things described in a bunch of different ways. I'll give you an example. Subcutaneous emphysema can be described as a bunch of ways in the textbook, which is air under the skin, and it's usually a symptom of a pneumothorax. My instructor, specifically in class, she described it as feeling like Rice Krispies under the skin. That's not how they describe it in the textbook, but that's how my instructor describes it. And guess what? My instructor writes her exams. So when I got on the exam and I seen in the question Rice Krispies under the skin, I'm like, oh, I know what she's talking about. Because even if they don't know it, instructors have a way of, if they write their own exams, incorporating their questions into their lectures. Even if they're not on purposely, all you need is those small clues to know what are they talking about. Or even when they're saying, like, oh, this is the hallmark sign and symptom. Or especially when they're talking about prioritization, I will always make sure in class to clarify, what do I do first? So a lot of the times in nursing, they're going to say, when this happens, you take these steps. But a lot of the times they won't give you a clear cut what comes first, second, and third. They're just like, this is what you do. I would always make sure to ask, okay, in this scenario, what do I do first, second, third, fourth? Because y'all know nursing school, they love those prioritization questions. And honestly, you're going to get different answers based on what source you're asking, but it's best to ask the source in your nursing school. And that's another reason why I tell you guys to be careful with buying all those additional resources. Try to make sure that you are really researching those resources to make sure that they align closely with your nursing school and with your nursing school curriculum. Because the worst feeling, I made this mistake my first semester, the worst feeling is being on a test and you have a question and you have two different answers in mind from two different sources. And now you don't remember which one came from where. You don't know which one to do. Like, that's so annoying. I try to keep my sources as minimum as possible, honestly. I try to keep it cute. Another thing that I will say is make sure that you are asking questions to clarify things. So I had some instructors that, well, you know, they're human too. They'll give contradicting information, or they'll give contradicting information, or they'll sometimes mix up their words. If something is confusing to you, clarify it. Because the worst feeling is knowing that you had an opportunity to get this information before the test and now you're on the test and you don't have it. That's literally the worst feeling ever, because it's like, this is, in nursing school, every point counts, and this is a point I could have had, and now I'm not going to have it because I just didn't freaking ask a question that I just should have just went ahead and asked to begin with. You don't want to be caught in that situation. Anytime I had a question, I'm asking it. I don't care how stupid it may sound. Like, I'm asking and I'm clarifying. So now that I talk about what I do in class, I'm pretty much just using that time to hear the information again, adjusting my notes because there may be small discrepancies between the video and lecture, because every school, every textbook, everything is different, okay? So adjusting things, like sometimes for numbers, for example, when I was doing ABGs, they were saying normal was 22 to 28, and then when I got to class, my instructor said, well, actually for this course, for HCO3, no. Right? Oh, yes. Okay. They were saying it was 22 to 26. So just adjusting things like that, as well as focusing on things that you think may be on the test, things that your instructor is emphasizing, repeating, going over with. Also, something I will always ask my instructors, some of them may not give you a clear-cut answer, which is fine. They don't have to give you a clear-cut answer, but it's still nice to ask because some of them will. Ask them if they're ask them if they rate their own exams, and then also ask them where are they pulling the exams from. So are they pulling the exams from the textbook? I mean, like the exam questions from the textbook? Are they pulling the exam questions from lecture? Are they pulling the exam questions from notes, PowerPoints? Some instructors are going to tell you everywhere, and some of my instructors really did pull them for everywhere, like everywhere. The good thing is with nursing, it is a standardized field for the most part. So as far as the textbook went, like there is a million ways to do things in nursing, but at the same time, the basic standard information does not change. So wherever you got it from should be good. It's just going to be small things that may be different in the textbook versus on simple nursing versus wherever else you got it from. Now, to kind of help you guys figure out if you should be taking notes electronically or if you guys should be taking them by hand, I'm going to tell you what's going on. For complex classes, and for me that was really only maybe med-surg and critical care, I think taking notes by hand did help me, but I would still transfer them electronically eventually, and that would just be an additional time of me hearing the source. So what I would do is in class, I would start like a whole, before class, I would take my notes while I watch my videos, my lecture videos, and I would take them by hand. And then after class, I would take the notes that I took in class and I would combine them. So that would help me just kind of like go through all the information. And when doing this, I was kind of making my own study guide in a sense. Like, I would make my own study guide that way, and I feel like this was the most effective way to study because you have that electronic note-taking and you also have the by-hand note-taking. For all my other classes, I only took notes electronically, and I feel like it was perfectly effective. Yeah, I think it was perfectly effective. So it really just depends on you and how you learn. I know some people can write by hand on the iPad. I cannot. I did not like that at all. If I was going to write by hand, I would just do it on a piece of paper. I didn't really like the Apple Pencil on Notability. I wasn't really a fan of that. I did use Notability in some classes to write on the PowerPoints, but not really. And I didn't like the feeling of it. It was just like a sensory thing for me. It wasn't that I thought it was ineffective. So it really just depends on the person. So after I would come out of class, I would do a lot of things, and I'm going to share with you everything that I did, how I liked it, and then you guys can just pick and choose what you think might work for you. So, like I said, the first thing I would do is consolidate my notes into one document and make that kind of as my personal study guide. Once I made that personal study guide, one of my favorite tools to use just for like studying on the go that didn't take a whole lot of things or a whole lot of energy was Notability. So for Notability, I would take my document, my study guide that I made based off my in-class notes and before-class notes. I would take it out of Pages and I would upload it to Notability, and I would use the tape feature. So on Notability, they have a tape feature where you can put like tape over certain words in your notes, and I would use that kind of to like test myself, like a fill in the blank question. So I would tape over things, ranges, things I needed to memorize, key topics, and then like every day I would leave the tape on, and then you can just tap it and it'll reveal it. So I would go through my notes, my whole study guide, a couple, like, every day before the test, maybe for like 3 or 5 days. And I would go through, and that just helped me have repetitive memorization of my notes, as well as seeing them a bunch of different times without just reading them over and over and over again, if you get what I'm saying. I would kind of read through my notes, but I feel like that can only take you so far unless you just have really great memory. I don't. I have the memory of a goldfish, honestly. So that would help. So, like, I would go through sometimes my study guides will be like 5,000-10,000 words, and I will be going through them like I'm reading a book, and I can anticipate what it's gonna say next. So, like, I'm reading through it. I have tape over, like, reference ranges, signs and symptoms, all that, and I'm reading through it, and I will be able to say, like, it's taped. I can't see it, but I'll be able to know, okay, a sign and symptom of a pneumothorax is chronic emphysema, decreased lung sounds on one side, and then I keep reading. So, attention pneumothorax is developing when you have tracheal deviation, things like that. What do you do when a chest tube is pulled out? The first thing you're going to do is use a sterile gauze to cover it up and then tape 3 sides so that the air can still get out. You get what I'm saying? Like, I would be able to anticipate what is coming next in the notes, and that was one of my favorite ways to study on my pastime, because you can do that literally anywhere. Like, you can do that, girl, anywhere. Like, I would literally just be in the bed at nighttime, like, before I go to sleep, just, okay, let me just read through this real quick. Studying doesn't always have to be a time where you're just in the library locked in. Now, there is a time and place to be in the library locked in, but passive studying can be just as effective because it helps you get in that repetition. Another way that I like to study, I'm going to tell you guys, I was not a whiteboard girl. I maybe used that whiteboard 5 times throughout nursing school. I didn't like it. If we're just being honest, it took too much work. It was too much work to set the whiteboard up. It was too much work to be standing up, writing all that. It was too much work to be doing it for every topic. For me personally, me and the whiteboard just didn't get along. I didn't like it, and it just was not the most effective way to study for me. Although I did see, like, firsthand personally how many people loved that freaking whiteboard. Like, girl, people in nursing school love that whiteboard down. So I'm not to say it's not effective. I do think it's effective. I just think for me personally, I didn't like it. And no one likes studying, but I do think that you have to kind of find a study method that you don't just absolutely hate, because then you're not going to do it. Like, that's just really what it comes down to, at least for me. Like, if you have enough discipline in yourself to be able to study in a way that you know you hate and do it consistently still, kudos to you. But I didn't have that level of discipline at all. So, like, the tape method, love that. I thought it was simple. I thought it was effective. Another tool I also used was Quizlet. Now, for Quizlet, I use pretty much Quizlet for clear-cut memorization. Things that I straight up just needed to memorize. I needed to memorize reference ranges. I needed to memorize signs and symptoms. I needed to memorize complications. I needed to memorize ventilator settings. I needed to memorize, like, stuff that just needed, it's either you know it or you don't. That's what I pretty much use Quizlet for, because Quizlet is very effective and it's very easy. I be on my phone, like, I'm literally at the club. Hey, I'm on Quizlet. Swipe that flashcard. Like, it's very... Quizlet is an OG, but I think it still is effective. It's just in nursing school, it's not going to be able to be all of your studying, because a small part of nursing school questions are over memorization. It's mostly over critical thinking. Another way that I love to study was teach back. So I might sound a little crazy, y'all. And y'all will see me doing this to y'all, because y'all know I documented my nursing school journey through YouTube. So when I would study, like, when I was studying, I would do like the little tape on notability, and then after that I would literally just start teaching it to the wall or to the camera or somebody, because if you can teach it back to somebody, that's how you know. And when I'm saying teaching it, the first time I taught it, I would teach it with my iPad, so like with my notes. I'll be like, okay, yeah, and then this, and then that, and then that, yeah, and this is what you do, this is your nursing intervention, your priority when you did with this disease, the first thing you're thinking about is, that's how it be. Then as I continued to teach it, I would start leaving the iPad over there. First thing you're thinking about when a patient comes in with a outer range potassium, get them on tele, get the EKG, initiate continuous cardiac monitoring. When you're replacing potassium, like stuff like that. What are the treatments for potassium? First, we're going to start with this. We're going to start with KX link. We're going to start with this. We're going to start with this. Like, I would just be teaching it to myself, which really helps because you can recall conversations. So you want to think about, what do I remember the best? Me, I'm messy. I'm not messy. Let me be honest. I'm not messy, but like, I'm trying to work on this. But I can talk a little mess. I could. That's something I was doing at the time. Okay, now. But I would be, I can recall what somebody said. Oh, no, baby, she did not say that. She said this, and this. So for me, hearing stuff, I would remember a lot better than just seeing stuff. I can't remember nothing I done seen. I really can't. But stuff I heard, I can remember that. Another thing for my auditory learners is Notebook LM. So Notebook LM, you can turn your notes. I said I had that study guide. You can turn it into a podcast with AI, which I recently just found. I didn't recently find out. I'm going to be honest. I found out a long time ago that AI is bad for the environment. So just don't say I didn't tell you that. But at the time, I had to pass. I'm sorry. So it'll turn your notes into a podcast, which is perfect to listen to on the way to clinical. When you're just going out, you're on the way somewhere. What's another time you can listen to it? Yeah, when you're on your way out, like working out, when you're going on walks. Like, the point is, you should be trying to hear this information anytime you can, because that repetition is what's gonna help you be able to feel confident on test day. The worst thing you can do in nursing school is cram. The worst thing you can do in nursing school is cram, because it's too much information. It's too much. It's too much. I'm like that boy. This is too much ice. That's too much ice. Get that back. That's too much ice.
Too much ice. Get that back. That's too much ice. Do not play with me. Do not play with me. That's too much ice. I said light ice. I said light ice, bitch.
Like, it's too much information to be trying to cram. You need to be studying continuously. I'm not saying, I never did 8-hour plus study days. I was never studying like that long. But I did try to study every day, every other day. Like, of course, I would take days off. I usually took the weekends off. But if you're studying 5 days a week, an hour to a day, and you're using effective study methods, that was enough for me. That was enough for me. This, I cannot stress enough. This is the most important part about studying in nursing school. If you do not do this part of the studying, everything I just told you previously will not matter and will have all been a waste of time. Nursing school questions are different. Nursing school questions are not made to simply test, do you know the information? I'm telling y'all, that's why I was struggling so bad my first semester. You can know the information and still fail in nursing school, because a majority of nursing school practice questions are going to be focused on critical thinking, prioritization, delegation, safety. Like, there's a bunch of underlying things that you're going to have to know on top of memorization. I encourage all new nursing students to watch Mark K. Lecture 12 before every test in nursing school, because he really does simplify it in the best way that you can on how nursing school questions are written and how you can answer them, and some test strategies that you can have to help you kind of get in that mode of answering test questions. However, the only way that you're gonna really just become a beast at those nursing school questions, like I did, is you have to do practice questions. At the end of the day, you have to be putting up numbers in those practice questions, okay? So before you take your first exam, you kind of have to, you're just gonna have to hope and pray on as far as practice questions go. Some schools will give you practice questions. If they give you practice questions, those are usually going to be the most accurate to what's on the test. Some teachers will deny give practice questions, and for that, I use the Saunders Comprehensive NCLEX Review, the online version with just the practice questions. So not really the book, but just the practice questions. That is what I use all throughout nursing school, and I loved it. Those questions were by far, out of any practice questions I've ever found, the most similar to the questions that my school used for exams. But my school also recommended Saunders. So they recommended that to us. It was not a requirement to get it. It was optional. So what I did is, like, me and a couple classmates, we split the $60, $70 that it cost, and then we just shared the login. And if your school does not recommend a specific software, I definitely think you can ask your instructor. But if they don't really recommend one, I think you cannot go wrong with Saunders, because Saunders is a NCLEX. It's not made for nursing students, really. It's made for people taking the NCLEX. If you are going to a good nursing school that genuinely wants you to succeed, your test in nursing school should be simulating the NCLEX. So any NCLEX software, you should be good. Additional resources, if you don't want to buy one as far as practice questions go, Nexus Nursing was okay. And I hate to say that because I really do love what she stands for, and I love that it's free, and I love that she's trying to help, the nursing students out, and she's not charging $300 like some people for the help. But at the same time, I just do not feel like her questions aligned closely with my nursing school. Specifically, her questions were simply not hard enough. They were not challenging enough as my school was. I do think for maybe like foundations and subjects like that, it may be efficient depending on how hard your school makes their questions. For me, it was not even efficient for foundations. Like, I simply use Nexus Nursing for my practice questions for foundations, like my first exam, and I did fine. I think I ended up getting like a 70 something, which for your first exam in nursing school, that's good. Like, majority of people failed, but the questions were much harder than what Nexus offered, which it's free, so you can't really be complaining about a free platform. Like, you get what you pay for. I know a lot of people use Nurse Sarah from Nurse in the Making. I didn't use any of her stuff in nursing school. I thought her videos were too long. I'm not gonna lie. I don't have the attention span. But a lot of people love her. So, yeah, for practice questions, I really just recommend Saunders. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think some people may surprise. Like I said, I didn't pay for Simple Nursing for their paid platform, so I don't know how their practice questions are. Level Up RN, I actually don't recommend their flashcards because I just feel like for the price, they're good flashcards, but flashcards is a very small part of what you are gonna have to learn, and like what you need to do to be successful in nursing school. So I feel like you can spend your money on better things, such as like a comprehensive platform like Simple Nursing. Wow, all this free promo, but I'm not gonna lie to my girls. Like, I want y'all to succeed, because if I had known what I knew now my first semester in nursing school, I would have had a 4.0. But I don't, because I didn't figure all this out till maybe like halfway through. Because I was accelerated, it was just such a learning curve. I felt like I didn't really have time to learn what I was doing and to catch up, because every time I even started to catch up, I had another exam. Like, every time I started to, like, okay, I didn't have time to think, okay, what went wrong last exam? Because by the time I'm thinking about what went wrong last exam, this exam is already here. Okay, guys, I'm all done getting ready. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my Instagram. And also, I do have a resource for new grad nurses, as well as just some tips for my nursing students that are coming to the end of their journey. I offer mock interviews, and I also have an ebook on everything that helped me to secure 3 ICU positions as a new grad, as well as 1 labor and delivery position. And yeah. And no, it's not $300, because y'all know how the nursing school people like to get, baby. We get a little greedy. I'm sorry, it's part of the profession or something, but no, it's not. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video or have any questions, make sure that you comment them down below. Also, if y'all have any additional study tips that I did not put in this video, comment them down below. And with that being said, I'm in a rush, so I love you guys. Bye.
I don't even say bye no more. I be like, mwah. No balls.